or I can actually. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so Jared, we just have a couple procedures since we are still following the governor's executive order for emergency meeting procedures. So we are meeting digitally, which means that the meeting will be recorded, and recording has started and it will be posted online. And because we're meeting digitally, we just ask that you keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking at the moment. And also, if you could just state your name before speaking so that everybody who's on the phone and on Teams can understand who's talking. And then we'll be taking roll call votes as well today. Okay, your turn, Jared.
Okay, why don't I officially call the meeting to order, which according to my time is 9:36 a.m. And also, as in our procedure, let us just identify ourselves by our first names, because after all, nobody else is listening. So I think that would be simpler and more convivial. Now, we should have a review of the public comment procedures, but we don't have any public present except our guest. And so I don't think that is going to be necessary. You agree, Jenny? Whoop, we've lost her. Jenny, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute. We have 3 consultants and property owner. Is there anybody else online from the public?
Well, excuse me, this is Michael Stein. I am not the property owner at 172 or 174 Post Road West. It's okay. I'm actually the architect working on a project that involves those properties.
Well, welcome, Michael. Welcome to the other members of the audience. So why don't we proceed by turning to the action items on the agenda. And the first thing we need to do is approve the meeting minutes for the September 18th meeting. And I'd ask somebody to move.
This is Cece. I so move.
I'll second. John will second.
John will second. Okay. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Chris, you're on mute.
Well, I had one. I'm Cecilia. I had one. I fully endorse all of the ones that Chris sent out to us, but yeah. On page 5, the second full paragraph, the last sentence, Dr. Bucky commented, "These strikes have little to do with wage levels. Workers were always fighting for higher wages." What I really meant to say, and should be recorded, the strikes were also about work processes.
I'm sorry, the strikes were also about, what was the last word?
Work processes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, Cecilia. Any other corrections?
This is John. I have a couple of minor typos, but I haven't seen Chris's remarks, so maybe he caught these. But on page 3, it should be Ms. Dyer Carol, third paragraph. That's 1.
Yeah.
Oh. And
no, I didn't catch that.
Oh.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And on page 8, last full paragraph, second line, it should be statewide survey of theaters, not or theaters. Are you with me, Jenny? 8.
Page 8, third line.
No,
I think I-
second
I
line
think I
from
had-
the, second line from the last full paragraph. Did you catch that, Chris?
I think I did, yeah.
Okay, yep, I got it.
I always pay attention to John.
Pardon me?
I always have to pay attention to what John says.
Any further corrections?
That's all I had.
Okay, anybody else with any additions or corrections? If not, let's have a vote. All those in favor?
We have to do a roll call, Jared.
Let's
Can
do
I
that.
just clarify, this includes all of Chris's changes as well?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
Okay, Jenny, do you want to read the roll call?
sure. Phil,
please?
Aye.
Cecilia,
Yes.
Stephanie, I think is still off, correct?
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Okay.
Yes.
Stephanie?
Hi. Yes.
Okay. Jared,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
John,
Yes,
Mark,
Yes.
Cece,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
Good. Thank you all. Now we can move into the proposed nominations. And I need a motion to review the nomination for the New Haven Armory.
This is Chris.
I'll
I move it.
I'll second then. Cecilia?
Okay, so Chris is voted yes, and Cecilia is seconded it.
Yep.
Okay, dope. Now let's see. Jenny, we'll ask for your staff recommendations, please.
Sure. So this is an armory constructed from 1928 to 1930 on a 2-acre lot in the Dixwell Avenue neighborhood. It's designed by Payne and Keefe with Dwight Smith. Staff recommends the property eligible for listing under criterion A for military history. This is the New Haven 2nd Company's Governor's Foot Guard and also the home of the 102nd Regiment of the National Guard. It's also significant for social history, both for its role as historic, has always been a community center, but it's also associated with New Haven's annual Black Exposition and played a role in the events surrounding the Black Panther Rally in the 1970s. Before I move on to criterion C, it is state level significance, and we are using criterion consideration G for the social history related to the Black Expo and Black Panther Rally. So the criterion consideration G extends through the 70s for those events. It also meets criterion C for architecture because of its property type. And the period of significance is 1930 to 1979, again covering the civil rights era activities. Noticing was sent to the City of New Haven, to the Mayor, City Plan Department, the New Haven Historic District Commission, the Ethnic Heritage Center, and the New Haven Preservation Trust. And we did receive a letter of support and request review from Ed Sherry at the Ethnic Heritage Center, who's familiar with the civil rights events. The CLG response is in process. We have received a portion of that and the rest is coming. So I turn that back to you.
Okay, now let's see. The consultant is Leah Glazer, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Leah Glazer, yes, is the consultant and she is on Teams.
Welcome, Leah. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
All right. So the nominations are A and C, right? All right. right. So, are there any comments from members of the audience? Hearing none. Review board comments, please.
Well, this is Cecilia, and I can't believe that it was never on the historic register to begin with. I was a little surprised at this, but I fully endorse the nomination.
Other comments?
This is Mark, and I will echo Cecilia's comment. The one additional comment I had is I think one of the really compelling things about this nomination is the discussion of criteria of, excuse me, consideration G. And while it's well documented and supported, it did leave me kind of wondering, so what is the story behind this being an armory, and an armory that, you know, mobilized during the 1970s against or, you know, in response to the anticipated civil unrest, and it transitioning to being a Black expo site.
Yeah.
I mean, that, I think there's a very compelling story there. When you talk about it being an armory, you almost think about it like capturing the fort. Not to make it that confrontational, but it is really interesting. I mean, how did that happen? How was it simply a matter of, well, they just rented out the hall and sort of it moved on from there, or I think there's a very it left me wondering. I think there's an incredibly interesting story to be told there. That was my comment.
Leah, do you want to respond to that now, or?
Yeah, I mean, there might very well be, but you know, as Jenny mentioned, it was a community center beforehand. It kind of always functioned as both. So it wasn't unusual for the community to claim that space, but I certainly agree that's what I found most compelling and exciting about it, that in a matter of, you know, a few months, this spot that had been, you know, the place of assembly, you know, against the rally, was then kind of reclaimed by the community. And I try to say that pretty explicitly, which makes it pretty profound and very telling in terms of the evolution of the Black Power movement at that time, and the shift from the idea of an aggressive movement to one more economically based, that shift that kind of Jesse Jackson helped with.
Yes.
Very articulate explanation.
This is Chris. Yeah, I'm familiar with sort of community use of armories in other places. I know in Washington, D.C., where I grew up, before the convention center was built, you'd always hear about things happening at the armory. And it took me a while to realize growing up that there actually was a military use of the building as well.
Right.
But with all the Black Panther events and so forth, I wondered if it would be helpful just to stress a little bit more the nationwide impact of that, and you know, the breadth of reporting on it, and kind of the levels of concern that was as a way of strengthening the criterion G. And in connection with that, I mean, the New Haven courthouse where the trial was held is on the National Register partly for that reason. And you mentioned the Kent State Massacre, and that site's on the National Register also for that. So it might be helpful to just reference those as a way of showing how this fits into the bigger history.
Yeah, to call those out, you mean explicitly.
Yeah. And maybe you know, some of the things that Ed Cherry wrote about in his letter of support about the mobilizing the State Guard, I guess it was, during World War II, including the Black unit. It's funny. After I read that letter, it seemed to me that there was not a lot of sort of specifics about military use. It was, they built this and they trained, and I didn't know if there were any other sort of events, especially maybe connected with wartime mobilization, that would be applicable.
Jenny, I don't know if I ever got Ed's letter. I went back and forth emailing with him, but I didn't get a letter. I didn't get a copy of his letter of support, I don't think.
Who was that speaking?
I'm sorry, this was Leah.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll send it to you as soon as we're done with the meeting.
Yeah. And just for those who don't know, Ed Cherry's an architect in New Haven. He's Black, obviously, and he used to be a member of this review board. For many years, yeah.
This is Cecilia. If I could just add to that, it would never occurred to me that it actually had military uses. It's always been a community center to me, and it so dominates the neighborhood. But I'd heard of, and this was maybe in the 90s, there was an exhibition of the Ghost Army, World War II inflatable tanks that were made in New Haven that were used as decoys in the World War II European theater. And I'm sorry, I actually missed that exhibit. Leah, I don't know whether you came across any reference to it, but it did take place at that army.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that kind of happened past sort of the period of significance that obviously could be, because again, it continued to be used. I did have several correspondences with Frank Carano, who was the former commander of that building, I think through the 80s and 90s. He's the one who helped me literally sit down and figure out what room everything was used for, like what every room was used for. And I wasn't even able to get free access to the building, but we had maps and we went back and forth on layouts. And, he talked about all of the uses. And, I think it really was primarily a place for assembly and training and he emphasized the community part of it as well. And I'm really happy, just interestingly, that I was able to sit down with him, meet with him over phone, also have a great Italian lunch with him because I just found out recently that he passed away in April.
Oh.
So
Frank Carano, who's
he was very excited about all this. What's that?
Is this Frank Carano, who's head of the teachers union?
I know it's a common name. I keep seeing that.
I know. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think he's more military, but he kept thinking I was writing a book. But he was super, super excited that, this was just getting attention. I'm very proud of this book. He was very proud of the film.
This is Jared, and I have a trivial footnote to all of that. The armory, of course, was used by the community at large in all sorts of ways, and a rather decorative way. When I was a student in the architecture school, I was asked by the New Haven Symphony if I would decorate the drill hall for a gala fundraising dance. And it was decided that it should be converted into the Piazza San Marco, which resulted in having to paint something like 16 24-foot high panels showing the surrounding buildings of San Marco, or at least to suggest them. And I was highly entertained by the nomination because, of course, it was an armory, and of course it had far more serious purposes. But that seemed to me what New Haven was all about in the early part of the 1960s. And you see how quickly thereafter the community became far more involved in certainly the racial issues, et cetera, et cetera. End of comment.
This is John. I had a comment on the architecture section, but I wanted to first also compliment Leah on a thorough job in bringing to light this overlooked resource. I know Karen Gilvarg was very concerned about its future. Whenever I talked to her, it would often come up. But anyway, back to the nomination. Under Criterion C, Architecture in the Significance Statement, I'd like you to take a fresh look at the first paragraph, Leah, because you call it an extraordinary example of armory design, but it really does not clearly state what was extraordinary about it. And I'm sure you know what it was, but it isn't coming across with the kind of clarity that an uninformed reader would understand. And you've got some points. Sentences sort of don't work clearly. And I just wondered if you could take a look at that section and just see what really made it extraordinary. If in fact you really feel that way, what made it typical? Is it, how well preserved is it? You know, these are all parts of its significance architecturally. And maybe you felt it was covered in the description, but this is really where you evaluate its importance architecturally.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is Chris. Yeah, I was going to say some stuff along those same lines. That yeah, extraordinary. I think in the first place involves some comparisons, some overt discussing this in comparison to other armories by Payne and Keefe, or maybe by other people as well. I also noticed a certain confusion about stylistic terms. In one place you talk about it being military Romanesque, in another place it's Gothic, in another place you talk about Deco style streamlining, and then as opposed to the military Romanesque, then you say that it's not so military in character. So these things don't obviously go together. So if you could maybe, they're at different places, and I can send page references to you, but they seem to jump around and contradict each other a bit.
Well, I guess that might be the answer to the first question. That's sort of what I feel is sort of different about it, that there were these different elements in it, but I understand the settling on one sort of type of style description. I think it was these Art Deco kind of aspects that help make it. And I guess when I said extraordinary in the next sentence, I was meaning for its large, for its size, and for that big unobstructed space. Or the main things that set it apart.
But I think armories, by definition, have a big unobstructed space. Is this one, so much bigger than others, or is it used?
So I'm told, because of the steel truss work and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'm told. When I asked people what they thought, other architects, what was unusual about it.
This is Jared, and my observation is that wasn't there an earlier armory that was somewhere over between Church and State Street, and it was had a smaller drill hall, and it became obsolete because it was too small, and they converted it into a hockey rink for the local hockey team to play in, and they used the Gough Street Armory because it had the larger drill hall for community events, as well as the military training, et cetera, et cetera.
This is Chris. Yeah, there was one on Meadow Street near the railroad station, and then there was one on Orange Street that the facade of which is still there. And I think they were smaller. The State Armory next to the Capitol, of course, is I think even bigger than this one. So.
And I think I say that at some point that it.
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah.
So, one other factual thing is the trim that you mentioned, brownstone blocks for the foundation and some of the trim, and that's actually concrete, cast stone it would have been called at the time. And in fact, if you look at one of your photographs, I think it's 18, you can actually see some of the rebar where it's, yeah, photo 18, it shows a window in the foundation. You can see where it's spalled a bit and the rebar's been exposed. This was a very common material. There were at least 2 companies in New Haven that made this high quality decorative concrete that's used a lot in the teens, 20s, 30s.
So I'm sorry, Chris, what kind of concrete was the description?
It's high quality,
Just high quality.
precast concrete for blocks and for decorative elements. At the time, it often was called cast stone.
Cast stone.
Yeah, and there's a nomination for a bank in Hamden, the bank at Dixwell Avenue and Circular Avenue. That's sort of the masterpiece of this cast stone stuff and made by one of the local companies. If you want more information, but that's probably more than you need.
Mm-hmm.
Just.
Oh, this is Jared. I think it's important with the government contract to build the armory that this specialty construction product made locally in New Haven was used.
Yeah.
I don't think that was entirely by accident.
Mm.
This is John. I have a minor question on 815, the second full paragraph. I don't know if a comma is missing or what, but what are turreted roofs massive? It's in the middle of the paragraph. It's 815, middle of the page, middle of the paragraph.
I'm sorry, John. I just found page 15. So say the word again.
It's the paragraph that begins with the growing manufacturing.
Okay.
Strikes only became frequent.
I'll read the sentence. It says, standard features included an administration building head house, a drill hall, a large enclosed space for regimental exercises, storage rooms, crowned towers, turreted roofs, massive. I think there's just a typo there.
Oh.
I think it's just a comma, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there needs to be a comma because it's the massive cornice. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the comma is missing.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other picky point of mine is, could you, before you submit this to Jenny, go through the whole nomination, and sometimes you spell out century and sometimes you use the number. You often put 19th as a number and then 20th is spelled out. Could you just be consistent throughout for that? Either way is fine.
Okay.
This is Chris. One other small thing. On page 21, criterion G, the first paragraph, the second line there, you refer to the second revolution of the African-American civil rights movement. And I think that term might need a little more explanation.
Actually, I'm not familiar with that term.
I'm not, I've vaguely heard it, but yeah, that's, I
The Black
think it's
Power movement. It's I've never heard it referred to as a second revolution.
Well, I didn't make it up, but I can understand.
Okay.
I can do something more more commonly known.
But there's a lot of great information in here, so yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Ken here, I've got a question. I'm looking at section 7, page 4. It's very, very minor. Under the summary paragraph, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth line in the beginning of the second sentence that reads, the approximately 155,000 square foot monolith.
Oh.
Literally, monolith is a single stone. Archaeologists use that all the time. An upright is a monolith. Is that used in some special way in architecture, or is that just the wrong word?
I was trying to just vary my choice.
And crazy
John,
thing in Utah.
Right. Well, people, because that was crazy too, because it can't be a monolith if it's made out of metal.
Right.
Literally made a single stone. So I would just change that word because it's not.
Yeah, I was just trying to,
Yeah.
again, stress the size.
There you
But
Megalithic might be better.
This is John. In the other consistency department, could you also check your use of African American? Sometimes you hyphenate it, sometimes you don't. And I think that may mean something to the Black community, and it should be just a deliberate choice.
well, I think I had it hyphenated, and then Jenny, you had made the point that I can't remember now what that was based on, and then I guess we didn't finish taking them all out, so I'll make sure that that's all consistent.
Yeah, based on the spelling of the National Museum that was recently established.
Right, the museum, right.
It's also
But
been-
if there's a better source, that's fine.
This is Phil. I've got a small but I think interesting point. Somewhere in the nomination that talks about tanks being parked on the streets of New Haven. My father-in-law with the state police was actually there that day, and he has spoken about how armored vehicles were on the streets. And these, at least one, maybe more, but were self-made vehicles by the state police. And he always talked about the problems they had with them, that they were so armored that the tires kept blowing out. So he often spoke anecdotally about that day and the problems the state police had. But he never talked about tanks. Yeah, small but maybe important point. I also have a number of typos in grammar that I'll just send to Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, review board, are there further comments that you would like to make? If not, we should perhaps consider taking a vote. Would that be good?
Yep.
Okay, I will ask the question for each of us to respond to a roll call vote. All those in favor? Jenny,
Yeah, sure. Phil?
Aye.
Cecilia?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Jared?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cece? Cece Saunders?
She seems frozen.
Okay, we'll come back to Cece. She was jumping on and off, so I think she's having trouble with Teams. Chris?
Aye.
Okay.
So why don't we just wait? Excuse me, we could get back to Cece to have her vote recorded. We'll just see how that works out. Where it obviously, the majorities of the ayes have it, as they say. So, Jenny, I don't see anything wrong with putting that aside and taking up the next nomination. Is that acceptable?
Sure, yeah. We'll catch her when she gets back on.
Yeah, okay. So we would like to review the nomination for the Waltersville School in Bridgeport, and I need a motion.
I will move. Cecilia?
I will
And
second.
a second. Excuse me.
Existing
second.
principal nomination.
Is that John Herzan second?
Yes,
Okay.
unless someone else already has.
Nope, that's it. So, Jenny, do you want to give us the staff recommendations?
Sure. So this is a nomination for an early 20th century school in Bridgeport. Was built in 1902 and also 1917. It is recommended eligible by staff at the local level under criterion A and C. Under criterion A, it's proposed for education, but also social history. because it is located and served a population with a high number of immigrants during the early 20th century. So it does pick up on the progressive era curriculum, but also programming that we believe was specific to the population there. It's proposed for listing under C for architecture for the typical characteristics of the progressive era space, and also the specific spaces for vocational and gender-based curriculum. The period of significance is 1902, which is the construction date of the earliest portion, to 1940, when the demographics of the population shifts and most of the students are Connecticut born at that point. Notice was sent to the mayor, to City of Bridgeport, and also the CEO of the Apex Building Corporation, who I believe is the developer. Todd can correct me. The city is not a CLG, and no letters were received in response. And Todd Bryant and Darren Raymond Locke are online as the consultants for the nomination.
Great, thank you very much, Jenny. And the criteria are?
It's A and C at the local level for education,
Okay.
social history, and architecture.
Excellent. All right, any comments from the audience?
Well, this is Cecilia. I would fully endorse this this nomination. I didn't realize the extent to which Waltersville had such a interesting history as a, especially as a special education curriculum, which I found fascinating. Very nicely put together with the Americanization issues of the progressive era. And into the 1920s. I would make a clarification. Section 8, page 12, the progressive movement, 1890 to 1930s. That is not actually the progressive movement ends in 1918 or 1920, maybe the end of World War I, but doesn't extend through the 1930s. And so I think that that's just a little bit overreaching on the part of the proponents of this, though it does then lead to the expansion of curriculum in the 1920s and into the 30s, which I think is very interesting, but and is an extension, yes, and perhaps that's what the developer, the writers of this nomination meant. But that actually is not the correct dating for the progressive era. What I did want to point out that it's unfortunate that there aren't any school records, but looking at the ways in which the curriculum changes is actually quite interesting, and I'm wondering if there are parallels in any of the other cities. Not that seems to have been researched very much, but Bridgeport was well known in the progressive era as having a very forward-looking agenda under the Republican leadership of John T. King in terms of urban redesign, in terms of city planning in general. And I'm just assuming that since not having seen anything particularly related to education, this nomination does.
Can I ask you to go on mute if you're not, Cecilia?
Yeah. No.
Thank you.
I'm not the one who's making the noise there. Unless you're talking about my speaking.
No.
And for one, for example, having dental clinics in the schools is a Bridgeport innovation, which is mentioned briefly here. But I didn't realize the special education might also have been unusual for an early time period. But if the work hasn't been done elsewhere in the state, that would, that's neither here nor there right now. I just think that it's a wonderful nomination. So many things have been torn down in Bridgeport, mostly due to neglect, that I think it's wonderful that these buildings are going to be repurposed. Is that the plan? Who's the developer again? And what do they plan? I know that's not to be taken into consideration, but I'm just very interested because this is a great neighborhood that I think needs to be preserved and not torn down.
It's
Jenny?
Apex. Sorry.
Jenny, would you repeat the name of the developer?
Apex
I'm going to let Todd Bryant answer.
Okay.
It's Apex Building, and they're a developer of, they're a minority-owned developer of affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
And so that's what's going to happen here. It's going to be entirely affordable housing in this area of Bridgeport. We're working on a tax credit tax credit application as well. They're doing a fantastic job. The exterior of the building will be, of course, completely restored. We're going to match the windows that we saw in a historic postcard. And the interior will be completely restored. The classrooms will remain intact. They're going to even keep the pressed metal ceilings in the classrooms. I mean, it's going to be a fabulous job.
All right, let's is that satisfy our curiosity, because it's really not relevant to our
I know it's not relevant
review, but thank you for the enlightenment too, by the way.
And just a quick mention about when you were talking about other places that this kind of special ed might have been done. We did a state register nomination for the Spireworth School in New Haven. Now that was built in 1925, but it was a specialized school built specifically for special ed. It was the first one in New Haven built for that purpose. And I think Waltersville was really the leader in this kind of work, and it eventually got to the rest of the state.
Yep. Okay. Bridgeport does lead the way.
Apparently, yeah.
Who is it leading?
This Todd Bryant, I'm sorry.
Todd, okay.
Oh, sorry, Todd.
Great.
Thank you. All right, other review board comments.
This is John Hurst. I just had a question about referring to the newer section as addition. When you look at Figure 5, which is the Sanborn map, they just read to me as separate buildings which have a tiny little connector. There's something about calling it an addition which doesn't fit my pre-perceived understanding of what an addition is. Another structure that just conveniently connected with a little connector. And I just wondered if it was historically perceived as an addition in spite of that thin connection.
Yeah, I believe that it was, and that connection that looks relatively insubstantial in the Sanborn map actually goes all the way to the basement. And it is definitely the junior high school definitely is an integral part of the other building.
But stylistically and in terms of bulk, they're very separate.
Oh yeah, no question about it. I mean, different styles built, 15 years later. I mean, there's no question that they're very separate. I mean, I wouldn't know how to approach that. And I mean, how would you characterize it then?
Can I just jump in for a second? This is Erin Raymond Locke. In the newspapers, in every document talking about this section of Waltersville, they do it as an addition, which is why I chose that word. But if it's incorrect, I'm happy to.
This is Jenny. So what John is asking is, I believe, is how the Park Service would want it counted. Would they want it counted as one building or two buildings? And so if it's, and that has to do with if it's two freestanding buildings that are later connected, they're usually counted each separately. And if one is built intentionally as an addition and is connected, it is counted as one. So in this case, we could discuss it further. Or if you want, I could check in with the Park Service reviewer on that in this case.
This is Jared. I have just an observation. Looking at page 32, the reproduction of the, I assume, Sanborn map is illegible. So it's very difficult.
Wait a second. 32?
Yeah.
I
mean, the black line around
that's got to be an artifact because it looks pretty good on my computer. I can, you know,
it looks good on the computer. It looks terrible on the page is the problem.
Oh,
yeah, it's one big blue square.
Well, I can fix that. That's got to be a technical issue. I mean, it prints fine for us. Does anybody else have that problem?
Color copy?
Yes.
This is Jenny. Do you have a color copy or a black and white copy, Jared?
I think it's a black and white. Yeah.
I have a color, and it's mine is a color copier, and is most of that block is just a big blue square.
This is figure 3.
Yes.
We're talking about figure, or at least I'm looking at it now.
No,
I'm looking at figure 2.
Figure 2.
Figure 2. Okay.
It sounds like maybe just a choice of the fill color.
Yeah. That's the GIS map from Bridgeport, and it's translucent. The fill color might be a little intense, so I'll just reduce that.
Okay.
Well, the problem is we can't look at that and have the discussion we've just had because you can't read what is on the page. So,
well,
thank you.
Okay, I mean, I can reduce that fill color. I mean, is everybody else having a problem with that?
Well, if you have black and white copy, we have the problem.
Yeah. So straighten out the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
it's easily replaced by figure 5.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wouldn't even include figure 2, sorry.
Yeah,
Figure
I
2
can.
is a site plan. This is Jenny. So figure 2 is a site plan that is needed. I think the issue is just it looks fine digitally, but in the printed copy it does not. So I think Todd has the skills to figure out how to make it legible in both versions.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I can do it in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I have a point on page 8, section 8, page 23, and I need Chris's help because I didn't have a chance to look this up. It says that they're talking about the Leon W. Robinson bronze medal.
Yeah.
That's Leone. Is that correct?
Leone.
All right, that's page 23, Todd.
I see it here. Okay, it's Leone, and I can.
He was a New Haven architect.
Yeah, just add the E at the end of Leon.
I.
Okay, add an I at the end of it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. They sort of wrap around the progressive curriculum and the architecture. Although, first of all, I was wondering, is there anything to suggest why Waltersville was chosen for the first of these special classes? Were there a high level of need in the neighborhood or just available space, or nobody said?
This is Darren Raymond. And nobody really said. It just seemed to be the one that from reading between the lines of these documents that I was looking at, just it seemed to be the one that had the most need. But nowhere said that outright. That's just me inferring.
And then connected with that, and I'm sorry, this is Chris, is sort of the connection between the curriculum and the design and construction of the building. For instance, you refer to the shoe shine stand, and it sounds in the summary statement as though it's still in existence. So if it is, I think we need a photograph and a real discussion of that. And are there any other ways in which the curriculum has shaped the construction of the building? I mean, you talk about in general terms like light and ventilation and heat and so forth, but are there specific kinds of classrooms, say for domestic science or vocational training, that you can see in the building?
No, I mean, I don't believe so. I mean, having gone through every single classroom, it's difficult to tell what their particular uses were, except that there is still a dental chair in one of them. Mostly because the metal thieves couldn't figure out how to get it off the floor.
Wow.
Oh, please put a photo in.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I'll put it
Okay,
in.
yeah.
I mean, it's probably a later one, you know, from the
The
50s.
dental school was there in the 1960s.
Oh, okay, but it's kind of an ongoing thing because you talk about the clinic.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the only evidence of special use in a classroom is that dental chair, and they may have figured out how to get it out by now, but I do have a picture.
Yeah. And then finally, you cite a couple of books about school design, and there's one actually in existence that's written by a Bridgeport architect named Warren Briggs. I can send you the reference. He writes Modern American School Buildings, published in 1899. And he talks a lot about light and ventilation and heating and size of classrooms and so forth.
Oh, great.
So I reference it in my Connecticut architecture book, but I can send you the link, the reference.
I knew I should have looked at that.
Yeah. And then one just question on page 13. You're talking about Dewey, which again is another question of whether he writes about school design, but he mentions worthy home membership. What does that mean?
Darren?
Sorry, I'm getting to
Right, 13, the bottom paragraph, right about in the middle. In Dewey's,
I
was 7 educational objectives, yada, yada, worthy home membership. Just what
I think what he was trying to say, and I have to look at the quote at, in context, was he's looking for kids to get some education in the school systems that they can then transfer home to be a vital part of the family. So in the case of girls, it's domestic science, for example. That's the easiest one I can pick up. That's how I was interpreting.
That's kind of what I thought, but it was just unusually worded.
It was an unusual quote.
Yeah.
This is Jenny. I forgot to mention at the beginning that this is the first nomination coming through where research archive closures due to COVID has been an issue. So if you have any other research sources available to you that would help with this, please share.
Yeah, because we just couldn't get into some of these archives, and who knows when that's going to happen.
Darren put in some footnotes regarding research sources she was trying to obtain that were not accessible so far. This is Jenny.
Yeah.
This is Stephanie. Related to that, pages 18 and 19, and that's where there is a footnote about limited access to archives. Excuse me. That section, if there isn't additional information, and it's the section subsection vocational training, Americanization classes, and hygiene. It could be edited to make it flow a little bit better. I think there are dates in there, and then a little bit of text following, and it just in terms of making it flow. If there is an additional information that comes to light.
Hi, Stephanie. This is Darren Raymond Locke. I take your point completely. Those were kind of my notes that I just left in situ because I didn't want to overtly edit them and then find other things and kind of lose where my train of thought was. But if I can't get into those sources, I'll certainly edit that to flow much better.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Todd Bryant. So how should we or you or anyone approach the fact that these gaps can remain for months? Could it, that's my question.
This is Jenny. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to observe that you have told me on several occasions that there were ways for nominations to be amended. And is this a situation where an amendment would be forthcoming when material is uncovered because of COVID?
You could do an amendment as long as there's enough justification for the areas of significance that are claimed. So if you can justify the significance with what you have, it can move forward. If you can't, the Park Service may return it for more information. So if you feel there's enough in here now, I think it is okay to leave the footnote and consider amending if necessary.
Well, Jenny, could I just ask, my mind is very sufficient, but I'm the newest person on the board. I don't know judgment.
You had a bad echo, so I could not follow that comment. You want to try again or put it in the, or you're on the phone, right?
Yeah. Let me try again. Is this sufficient? It seems to me sufficient as it is.
This is Mark. Can I weigh in on that? This is a comment in a larger picture. This is, I think, the third or maybe fourth Progressive Era School nomination we've reviewed in the last 3 years. And it's a very similar story each time, which is lots of cool things happened. There was an immigrant population. It was vocational. And the building kind of looks like the building without a direct tie to, like Chris's here. That's a really great tie. And I don't know, this is an open kind of conversation starter. Are we looking at this type of high school, elementary school as a thematic type in Connecticut? And this is just another one of those, or maybe the first, perhaps? Or is this truly, significant for the reasons that are being listed under Criterion A? Because no offense to the authors, but I've heard this story at least 3 times before. So one has to question how significant is it at this point.
Could I jump in? This is Darren Raymond Locke. For me, Waltersville is significant because it's one of the leaders, innovators with the mentally handicapped or the special education curriculum. The vocational side and certainly the Americanization side, while very interesting, seemed more common when I was researching it and fell into more of the standard discussion of progressive era schools. But in terms of the special ed development and the progressive way they approach that, that's where the significance came for me. But of course, I defer to you all as, and we'll do what you guys think is best in terms of this nomination.
Darren, this is Mark again, and thank you for that comment. I'm certainly not meaning to question this nomination, but it does speak directly to the question of, is there enough here to support this nomination? I take your point. The discussion of working with, the quote, the mentally handicapped is a really compelling one in this story. Do we have curriculum? Do we have stories of these kids who were trained and what they went on to do? Do we have elements of the building that reflect how they were trained, such as the Shoeshine Station, or something that would tie this and bring it more to light? That would be my question. The bigger question is what's presented sufficient to make this eligible? Probably, yes. But I think there's more of a story to be told here.
I think it's gonna. And this is Todd Bryant. I think it's gonna be. It would be. I can't imagine how you'd find those things about that, because I know Darren has mined every possible resource on newspaper articles and everything else. I mean, we could give it a shot, certainly.
This is Darren again. There was nothing more about curriculum that I found in anything. All of the superintendent reports were published in the Municipal Register, and some years they didn't report at all. Some were much more elaborate than others. There's nothing that exists within the Board of Education in terms of reporting what curriculum had happened, but I did find in kind of weird places discussions about what these kids went on to, and I believe I put one of the reports in there where they surveyed a number of students that had come out of this program and what they ended up getting into. And it was talking about being quote unquote productive members of society. And some of these kids ended up going and becoming clerks, and some became painters, and some, ended up doing A, B, and C. So I did try to put in whatever stories that I could find that made this a more personal, more intimate discussion of how this impacted the greater community at large.
Jared?
Hello.
Can you hear me? This is Cecilia.
Yes.
All right. The echo's back. I don't know what that's about.
Let me try this. It's not my phone that's doing it. It's someone else. And I'm off speaker, and I'm now on the handset. That there's a lot of eugenics going on in the 1920s, in which intelligence tests are not a modern, and so we don't know how feeble-minded any of these students are. Just keep that in mind. It could very well be that they're just they're foreign stock students. Just to create a more context. It's not. I wouldn't consider this a modern special education curriculum, but in terms of the late 20th century.
I think Darren did put in there, though, that that there's no real criteria. I mean, we don't really know how they decided. I mean, and they put it's interesting that they put, truants, kids that they thought were mentally deficient and
Right. Yes.
and just regular classroom disruptors all in the same class, and I can't imagine the chaos that caused.
Yes. Right,
But
exactly.
to that same point, they were obviously changing the enrollment, at least in that initial class, because it started with an enrollment of 70 and ended the year with an enrollment of 25. So there's obviously some way that they're shifting children around based on mental acuity or just ability. And I don't know what that was because nowhere that I could find really discussed that. That being said, by the late 19-teens, early 1920s, they did start implementing intellectual testing, which I think was headed by the Yale professor, Dr. Gessel. Seems of 1916, I just found the page. So they are kind of trying to start that process of, kind of establishing criteria or establishing a way to understand better where each child falls in relation to the rest of the school population.
Right. But, the 1914 superintendent's report actually talks about, children who are ill with TB. Also being defective, or mentally handicapped. It's a real hodgepodge. But it's an interesting early effort. And probably unique in the state. I don't know.
It seems to be the earliest one in the state that I can find. It seems to be early countrywide as well. So,
That's not me.
No, I just muted it. It was me. Todd.
Okay, Jared Edwards, are you still on? Chris, I may hand it to you if that's okay until Jared resurfaces.
Okay. So where do we stand? Is there any other discussion that's needed? Or are we ready to I guess, Mark, is your question answered sufficiently to make a decision?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Then I guess we're ready to vote. Jenny, can you call the roll?
Sure.
Wait, excuse me. This is John. I was disconnected, and I had another comment about the architecture. Because I didn't hear. I'm sorry about the echoing. Maybe I should hang up.
Oh, it sounds good. It sounds fine.
Everybody seems to be echoing.
Okay. Anyway, if you turn to page 8, you can see in the upper photograph, photo 7.
Page 8.
To me, that's a very unfortunate alteration to the building, and it really challenges its integrity. Certainly, I'm not questioning its historical association and educational importance, or at least history. But I'm very troubled by the infill on that very monumental entranceway, and wondered if the developer or Todd could speak to what will happen to that. Because architecturally, it's a detraction.
Which no, this is a photograph. This is
Photo 7, I believe.
Photo 7.
Oh yeah. I am not sure how they're going to address that. I know they're going to fix the doors. I can, if you give me a second, I can try to actually, because I can't. I'm not used to this format. I'm mostly using Zoom, so I can't really go to the drawings right now.
That's okay. But what I'm
But they are going to address it, and I think we have a. I think. Let me just hang on a second.
Yeah. Well, what
we have a historic photograph.
Doesn't really matter. I mean, this is a question of the integrity for listing now.
It is, exactly, Chris. And my question is whether this should be called non-contributing as an element of that design, because all the windows have been replaced. This is a really horrible infill. And, you know, I don't want to memorialize it as significant.
Well, how could how would you just say that that particular element is non-contributing?
It's a very distinct piece. We discussed that before.
But how would you do that? I mean, you couldn't make the whole building that whole element, that whole junior high element non-contributing.
Theoretically, you could.
But
under the theme of architecture.
Well, I mean, you know, to go to another issue, I mean, that would have a real problem. That could easily affect the tax credits.
I know, but it also
not a problem.
It's not a tax credit register; it's a historic register.
Right. Well, I mean, what I can tell you is we have this historic photograph, and I'm pretty sure the developer is, and like I say, I can't get to the drawings right now because it's on this computer. I can make sure that the developer brings it as close as possible to the historic photograph that we have.
Well, that's
the best I can do.
But that's not enough to hang your hat on for this purpose now. And I know you're in a bind, but I think it's an important issue.
Right. But the rest of the building, except for that one element, is pretty much intact, except for the replacement of some doors. And the windows.
I would suggest that we call it non-contributing architecturally. Maybe social history is contributing. Jenny, is there a way of acknowledging its poor integrity?
I mean, you can describe that in the integrity statement, but I think you have to make a decision, and you, whether or not you count them as separate buildings or one building, you can still describe an addition as contributing or not contributing or detracting or not. But I think you'd have to make a decision about the building or that section of building. Because otherwise you would be calling it a contributing building and saying that in terms of integrity, this piece is altered, but that the building as a whole still contributes. So I think you'd have to make a decision about whether this whole section of the school contributes.
You know, because it's just that one element, you know, everything else is pretty much there. And it's certainly recognizable as what it was.
Well, I'm having trouble with defining the threshold of integrity. I'm sorry. With the addition.
Well, I mean, I would. This is Todd again. It's. I mean, I'm agreeing with Jenny on this. That if we call it out in the integrity section, and you know, specifically mention, you know, how grotesque it actually is. You know, the rest of I'm having a hard time understanding that the rest of the building should be deemed non-contributing because of this one unfortunate mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Chris?
Right. Other review board members have thoughts?
Hello.
Yeah?
It's Cece. I'm back on. I've been kicked
Yes.
off 3 or 4 times, but now I'm back on by phone.
Yeah. Cece, we're looking at photograph 7, the main entry of the junior high wing of the building, which has a rather significant alteration and badly done alteration. And the question is, if that's how harmful that is to the integrity of that wing, that portion of the complex.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, 7 and 8 are on one page. I see that. I see the infill there. Yeah. Okay.
I brought it up. This is John Cece because it really, to me, modified the architectural quality of that and originality of that piece.
But of the whole building, that's just that one.
It's the
one
major
area
entrance.
on that.
Yeah. It's if it were just a band of infill windows, and they're all replaced anyway, which seems to be a given with old schools. It's the combination of change that I'm concerned about with that.
Okay.
This is Todd again. I mean, but to me, it doesn't. I'm agreeing with you that was a serious error with the way they did that. But I find it hard again to throw out the baby with the bathwater, sort of kind of with this. Despite the fact that I'm agreeing with you about it's inappropriate, the inappropriateness of this particular change.
One of our charges, Todd, it's John again, is to evaluate integrity. And my concern is that I don't want to lose credibility with the Park Service for just minimizing this.
Oh.
Well, I mean, the question is, do you think, John, that it damages just the architectural integrity, the criterion C integrity, or does that also call into question the criterion A integrity of the building?
No, I said earlier that my concern was just for criterion C.
Yeah.
And in a way, I would want to visit the whole question of our criteria for the whole complex versus part of it.
I'm sorry, that's a little too garbled.
I'm confused. I'm confused about the use of criterion C for this because of the lack of integrity of the architecture.
So you're suggesting that it not be listed at all under criterion C?
It's a question. I would have to. I think it can fly under criterion A, and I just don't think it has the integrity to make C. At least the addition doesn't. And I remember you can have a non-contributing addition. If we do keep C, I'd like to at least have this building be non-contributing under criterion C. And I don't know if that's possible.
You don't know if it's what?
I don't know if it's possible to differentiate without just not using criterion C versus only omitting it for the addition.
Jenny, what do you think? Are we would that take a major restructuring of the whole nomination?
I mean, I think you just don't argue for C, which is what we did with the recreational district, the Short Beach Historic District. We had a discussion about A and C, and it stood just on A. because there was some integrity concerns for C. So you can do it. You only need to meet one criteria to be listed. You just have to make a good case under A, make sure that the statements under A can carry it.
I know we're not supposed to take this into consideration, but would that affect the tax credit applications?
Well, you're not supposed to take it into consideration because we have to evaluate the eligibility based on the current condition, and I'm assuming, Todd, that this photograph is accurate to the current condition right now.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so
this is Cecilia. Could I just ask whether I don't see that we have documentation that inset wasn't already inset. And we can, if we can ignore the cladding on it. But I'm not sure that the front and back would be exactly the same. Because it looks like in the postcard from 1920 that there actually is a big insert there.
This is Jared.
An alcove.
This is Jared, and it's hard because there is no period photograph showing the front elevation of the high school, and therefore we only see the recess within the large archway. But if you look at the plans on page 41, 42, 43, you can see that recess apparently only exists at the first floor, because on the plan for the plans don't show a recess on the so-called first floor and second floor, only in the basement. So it's hard to anyway.
This is Todd Bryant again, and figure 7 is the historic postcard, and you sort of kind of see it on the left-hand side.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
And then when you go to photo 7, which is the current condition, and that's what John's concerned with, it is. The windows are in more or less the same place. The entrance is in the same place.
Right.
They've certainly been altered. They filled it in with some kind of, drive it or something.
Yeah.
But it's certainly different. But it's not wildly different. The entrances are in the same place. The windows are in more or less the same place. It's butt ugly, I think, is the architectural term. But you got to help me out there, Michael. But I don't think I can't agree that it compromises the integrity of the entire building.
Yeah. From my non-professional architectural eye, I would have to. It seems like it's not replacing the brick part of that building.
This is Jared, and I would just simply observe that if one was doing a project of the sort that seems to be being proposed to this particular school, you'd get somebody over there with a crowbar and get rid of that, drive it, and see what's behind it.
See what's behind the siding, yeah.
So it's conceivably there, but nobody has got a picture of it, so.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, because in my experience with every time that someone's done this, or even with, when somebody's sided a building, there's many examples of buildings that have been canned in some way or another. And when you take it off, it's all the real stuff underneath it. And I would, because why would anybody bother to, you know, change that? So, you know, I don't think that it would be that difficult to drive it off of there.
And actually, this is Jared again, and if you look at figure 7 and you compare it to the contemporary photographs, the figure 7 postcard shows quite a fine, simple, almost Bauhausian kind of structure there. And it was considerably compromised by the city of Bridgeport when they changed all the windows, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if you look at figure 7, that's pretty much what you would do if you were improving the building for other purposes.
Yeah.
Try to go back to what it looked like circa 1920.
Well, this is Chris. I mean, you can clearly see in figure 7 that there's some kind of, you can't see what's happening really inside of it.
Right.
Maybe the question, maybe the answer is table this, go back, pry off some Dryvit and see what's underneath.
I would feel much better doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't find a photograph showing what's in the archway, in the recess, as it were, then that's what you should do. Just let's table it and do that.
Could I ask Michael Stein, since I worked with him on other projects, and his office is down the street. Michael, how difficult would that be to do?
I don't think it's very difficult. I mean, I'm not privy to all this information. I don't have your submission, so I'm really just listening to the discussion. But I do agree that the simplest way to renovate these is just to encapsulate what's there rather than take it down. So there is a good likelihood that if you do remove some of the Dryvit, if it is Dryvit, you will likely reveal original construction.
Unless the material was damaged in the process.
Excuse me?
Unless it was masonry behind it and that was damaged in the process of applying the Dryvit.
It's quite likely that there's going to be fasteners to whatever the substrate of the Dryvit is that is connect. You know, if it's a old Dryvit system, it's an insulation board that is literally nailed and screwed to whatever's behind it, and then this is just troweled on it. So there might be damage, absolutely, but
it could be repaired. I mean, that's just
absolutely
pointing the brickwork.
You'd also find out, answering the questions that are being asked here is what did the original construction look like?
Yeah, I suspect that. I mean, you can see that from the interior. I think where the windows would have been. What it looks like to me is that and it may have been, it might not be Dryvit covering brick. We don't know that. But I think we could see the original window. We can see the window openings from the interior, and if those they may very well be the original window openings in the correct place. They just did something weird with the surroundings.
Did you add a photograph of those? That might be helpful in making
from the I'll have to look for it, and if I can't, I'll get them to let me back in and I'll shoot it.
Yeah, see what you can find without a crowbar.
Yeah, because I think, I hadn't considered this issue, but I will get them to let me back in, and I will, explore this as best I can.
Thank you, Todd.
Can I ask Jared a question?
Excuse me. This is Jared, and I have just one comment for Todd. When you get back into the building, I think it would be useful if you confirmed the elevator shaft that is in the connector between the two buildings, because it was never mentioned in our discussion, but it is obvious that when the high school was built, it was decided that it would be appropriate to have one elevator shaft to serve both buildings, and so it is in that connector.
Yes, it is.
And I think that helps us understand that this building added as an addition to the original because they needed the elevator shaft to serve the original building when the high school was finished.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I think that cinches it as an addition as opposed to a separate building.
This is John. I wondered I have a question for Darren. Darren,
sorry, but Darren had to go off the call.
Oh, I'm sorry, Todd. I didn't know that.
But ask it anyway because I might know the answer.
No, it has to do with access to archival material, which has been posed as an obstacle. But there are several archival sources in Bridgeport. There's the History Center and the library and the museum. And I know that these are closed, but they're often staffed. And I wondered if you could make any effort to find out if they have more comprehensive images of the buildings.
We did attempt to do that.
Which might give us the information we're looking for.
We did attempt to do that. We did attempt to do that before everything closed down. And the best we could find was this one postcard.
Wow.
This is Jenny. I did talk with Darren about the archives being closed. But there is a retired Bridgeport City historian who lives in upstate New York who I could try to call.
Yeah.
He is retired, so he's not actively working as a city historian.
That's I can't remember I'm losing his name. What?
Charles Brovich.
Right, there you go, Brovich.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he will have some recollection.
I have his phone number if you need it.
Oh, great.
Because we're working on the Little Liberia project in the South End.
Oh, great. Could you? I mean, we can call him. If you want to, if you can share that number, because I know him from other projects.
I don't know how many members of the current review board. This is John. Remember, Charlie used to write scads of nominations when the program was getting underway. If you look at our files for Bridgeport, he's written about, I think at least 15 nominations, if not more. A very, very devoted preservationist in Bridgeport.
Yes.
Yeah, he's terrific.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy who you ask him a question, he says, oh yes, the Connecticut Post wrote about that on April 13th, 1912 on page B6.
Yeah. Right. And yet I happen to have 15 pictures of that under my bed.
I can't put my
I think we should move this along
now, but I'll send it to Jenny.
Thank you.
Jenny, I have a procedural question. This is John. Just hypothetically, could we approve it conditional upon getting more clarification on the integrity questions that were posed? Or is it better to table it or continue it till the next session?
I don't know if that question is for me. I mean, I guess it depends what the investigation tells you about the integrity. So if you have a question about it that you're waiting to be answered, you might want to wait for the question to be answered. But if you feel that it's eligible under A anyway, then I would suggest moving it forward and having the edit concerning whether or not to leave C in or drop C off.
Thank you.
So
I would feel more comfortable dropping criterion C, this is John, and letting it go forward because I have I'm not trying to uphold a very worthwhile project. I'm trying to just meet the standards of the program as I perceive them.
This is Jared, and I think we just simply cannot.
Brian at 203.
Somebody's not on mute. I think John Herzan is proposing. Are you proposing that we proceed, but without the
Criterion
integrity
C.
issue resolved at this moment?
I'm proposing what Jenny suggested, that we let it hang on Criterion A as a nomination, which will get it listed anyway, and not go to bat for C because of the, I think, substantial alterations to the buildings, fenestration.
Right. Okay, so review board, let me just ask, is there anybody opposed to John's proposal?
I have a question. I don't think I got my answer. This is Cece. I don't think I got my answer, and I know it's probably not legitimate, but what does this do to their application for the tax credit if it's under Criterion
if it goes on
A?
the national if it goes on the National Register under A,
it doesn't
alone,
matter which criteria. Okay.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah,
All right.
I think it's Todd again. I believe that the way the tax credit program is written, it just says listed in the National Register. It doesn't say which criteria it has to be listed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
is,
Thank you.
So
Is,
to me,
is there anybody that is there anybody that objects to the proposal that John has made? All right, hearing none. Now, Jenny, tell us what you need to have by way of our vote here.
okay, hold on, Chris Wigren.
I think what we need to do is amend the motion to list it only under Criterion A. So
okay, are you moving?
I am so moving.
Okay,
Who
seconds that?
John seconds it.
John seconds it. Okay, we have a proposal, we have a motion that's been amended.
Well, I think we need to vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
Okay, so first let's have a vote on the amendment.
Okay,
Does somebody want to state the amendment?
The amendment is that the motion be to recommend this for listing under Criterion A and not under Criterion C.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye, and we have to have a roll call vote. Jenny,
Phil?
Aye.
Cecilia?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Jared?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cece?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Okay, so that was unanimously carried. So let's now have a vote on the amended motion. Do we need to restate the motion? I don't think so.
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Roll call.
Phil?
Aye.
Cecilia?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Jared?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
I'm going to apologize for this, but no.
Okay. Cece?
Aye.
And Chris?
Aye.
Okay, we have that. Now, before we go to the other items on the agenda, we needed. Was it Cece that was not responding to the request for a vote on the first nomination?
Yes.
Yes, because I can't. My network collapsed over here
Oh, yes.
at that point.
Yeah. So has that been counted now? Where are we with that, Jenny?
Cece, we would like your vote on the recommendation for listing for the Armory, please.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we now have processed 2 nominations, and thank you very much for that. Jenny, we now should turn to the eligibility status and the William Jones House.
Okay, so I will invite the consultants who are on to stay on if you would like. I will relieve you if you would like to go.
Jenny, I just wanted to just note one thing, because the issue of the phrase second revolution came up that nobody had heard of. And I just wanted to let people know that I ironically got that from the National Park Service context statement for the civil rights movement. And that's why I put it in there. I took it out, but I just wanted to let everybody know that that's where that phrase came from.
Wow.
This is, yeah,
Wow.
of course, I have,
Thank you.
fine, go ahead and use it, especially if the Park Service does, but maybe just throw in a half sentence refers to.
Okay.
Thanks,
Wow.
Leah.
Well, thank you, everybody. Now let's turn to the William Jones eligibility issue.
Okay, so this is a property that was identified within the Kings Highway North Historic District that was listed in 1998. And there are some changes proposed. So you are being asked, as usual, to discuss the current integrity of the property as it is right now and evaluate whether or not it continues to contribute to the district. And I believe Marina Wisniewski is on, can probably answer questions about if it was identified accurately in the original nomination. So Todd Levine is also on, and Michael Stein is on as the architect. So Todd, do you want to introduce this?
Can I don't mean to step in, just a bookkeeping clarification. The William S. Jones House is not the building we're looking at. This building is an outbuilding associated with the Jones House. Jones House is actually address is 174 Post Road West, and this outbuilding is 172. Just so that, because the agenda states William Jones House 172 Post Road West. That's inaccurate.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, this is Todd. Sure, I will just introduce this, and we will take a clarifying look at what Michael had just stated. Marina, can you just double check on that? But
yeah, the nomination lists it 172 as the William S. Jones House, so it may be listed erroneously, but in the nomination as it is categorized, 172 Post Road West is William S. Jones House, circa 1860, moved, reconstructed, 1989, contributing inventory number 85, section 7, page 7.
Right, yeah. So as listed, whether the original house or an outbuilding, it's listed as a contributing resource to the Kings Highway North District. And this is a potential SEPA case, although we have a potential situation where it's only going to be moved within the district, which has nothing to do with your evaluation at this point, but we're just looking for your thoughts on whether it continues to contribute.
Can I ask a question? This is John. The outbuilding, do we have a visual? Have you seen, Marina, when you were doing your site visit, did you see the outbuilding? Because I assume it's distinct, it's separate from...
John, look at photograph 7. In the packet that Jenny sent us. I think Marina, if I'm not mistaken, and Michael, this is Cece. The original house, there's a house there. There's the original house, and the outbuilding is across the little stub of a driveway.
That's correct.
That's correct.
I am handicapped by not having that piece of the submission. I don't know if it wasn't mailed to me, but I've kept my packet together, but I don't have it, unfortunately, nor do I have the.
I emailed an update. There wasn't time to mail it, but I emailed out the link and all the files are online. It's okay. I don't know if you're near your computer, but if you are, I put the link to all the meeting materials in the meeting chat. I could email it to you again if you're nearby.
No, I have my computer. I just want to make sure I can get it. Can you hold on a minute?
We could share
proceed
the
with the proceed with the meeting. I will look.
John is not on the Teams, Todd, so he can't see the screen if we share. We can share the screen, but you can also go on our website and pull it up.
This is Cece. I had great fun walking through this area, and I didn't have the fun of going into the building as Marina and Todd did, but I photographed the outside areas and taking views from different perspectives. So those are the photographs added at the end.
Excuse me for a second.
I just discovered how to change my background, so it's very, very exciting for me to be all over the place. So look at that, huh? Look at that. It's very, very exciting. Does anyone have any questions that we can answer just regarding the site visit while John takes a look at the photos?
Okay, this is Jared, and I'm just looking at the aerial. The red square surrounds the building that we're discussing, right?
That's
correct.
The outbuilding, yeah.
Yeah.
And to the left of that, across that little driveway, is the Jones house, which is address 174.
Okay.
What
the addition to the Jones house was done all to the rear, to the west
and
side.
that's not what we're discussing.
No.
But
Why
that's correct.
The red square.
So why was this building included to begin with?
Good question.
It was an out.
So according to the nomination, it appears that the building was categorized as an outbuilding from the mid-19th century, which would fit into their period of significance and the areas of significance in the nomination. When we went there, it does not appear to reflect characteristics of a circa 1860 outbuilding.
No way.
It reflects as a single-story small ranch home with a CMU foundation with a dugout crawl space. So you can also see from the photos that it's all dimensional lumber floor joists. On the interior, the subfloor is diagonal cross bracing. There is, dimensional hardwood. The chimney is clearly, appears to reflect, mid-20th century. And baseboard details, living room details, all those photos that you've seen. I mean, to the point, if it was an outbuilding and it had been converted at a period of time, changes would be reflected to change it from a non-temperature controlled structure to a residence. But while I was there, I was not able to view any sort of framing members that appeared to date from prior to the 20th century.
The bushes in front are older than that building, right?
I would
No
think that
question
maybe they
about
were
that.
planted when the building was moved there.
Yeah, it says it was moved and reconstructed, and that
Yeah,
it,
well,
reconstructed in mid-20th century style.
Yeah, I mean, part of the question is whether that's what they mean by reconstructed. I mean, for some people, it's recreating a building that has ceased to exist, but other people I've found tend to use it to refer to remodeling.
Yeah,
Right.
and I'll just add in terms of, an agricultural outbuilding, obviously the form doesn't look like our standard, 30 by 40 English barn. It could have been a different type of agricultural building that we were not able to determine based on the form or interior structural members.
maybe the foundation is 19th century and we can't see it, but everything we're looking at doesn't appear to be 19th century at all.
Well, no, the foundation is the concrete block. Is there.
And so I went in the crawl space looking for some sort of, maybe if there was a beam or something that had been sistered, and it was all new. It was all new dimensional lumber on concrete footings. So we weren't able to get access to the attic. We weren't able to get access because there was no interior access. I looked for anything on the interior closets, anything. Every wall had been refinished. So there was very little to look at as far as some sort of identifying clues.
But don't we have to get to the question of whether it contributes to this district that is so you can't see this outbuilding from the district. You can't. It doesn't in any way, shape, or form contribute to the district.
And you walked the district, so you know.
Yeah. I couldn't find it. I couldn't get a picture of it.
Marina, this is John, point of clarification.
Yes.
The outbuilding is that part of what we were told was 172, according to the I realize it was the label on the nomination form, the address, but I'm just confused what the relationship is of this building to the one we all thought we were looking at initially.
It doesn't make it clear. From the nomination, it just points out that it is a vernacular outbuilding. It would be reasonable.
Is it on that parcel? Is it on that parcel?
Yes. So they were moved back. So this parcel has been subdivided. So originally they were much closer to Post Road West, and then so if you look at the aerial photos, you see that there are these kind of multi-story commercial mixed use, commercial on the first floor, some sort of, I think they look like condos, which look like those were the things that they were building at the time. This may have been, this was getting ready to be listed. So these were moved up the hill. So the house, which is 174, the larger house, was moved farther up the hill. And an addition was added. And this building, what they presume this building was moved up the hill around the same time.
But they're on different parcels now? Is that in different
That's
ownership?
a question for Michael.
Correct.
Michael, they different parcels?
Yes, they are on different parcels. That's why they have
different owners. Are they different owners or just out of curiosity?
No.
It's the same owner.
I believe that they're by the same owner.
Okay. Thank you.
Right now, they are rental housing units.
And so we are being asked to just evaluate the contributing status of the outbuilding. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, is it 50 years old?
89.
Yes.
Constructed in 89.
What's the period of significance for the district?
Yeah, so I think to Chris's point earlier, you know, what was their actual scope when they did their reconstruction? And again, from the form of the building and the investigation that Marina did inside, there does not appear to be materials or you know, again, form that fits within that significant the period of significance.
The period of significance is 1736 to 1948.
All right. Wow.
Okay, let's cut to the chase. I'm going to make a motion that we consider that it does not contribute to the Kings Highway Historic District.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion?
John.
Any discussion? We have a motion and it's seconded, and I will ask for a roll call vote.
Sure. Phil? Stephanie?
Aye.
Jared?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cece?
Aye.
And Chris?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimously voted. Thank you very much. Now, our next agenda item has to do with a review board's bylaws and policy statement, and we would like to have the board vote for the draft of the bylaws, and then Jenny can explain the policy statements to us. But let's start with the bylaws, and Jenny, you might just introduce them. We didn't have bylaws for more than 15 years, so.
Well, we had bylaws. So the history is that when I came on board and looked for bylaws and policy, I found some very old documents. So we have been working off of the 1987 bylaws. I brought this originally to the December 1st, 2017 State Review Board meeting. And I realized we have a few members now who weren't on the board yet. But in December of 2017, we took a look at all of the regulations, both in state statute and federal regulation regarding the State Review Board and its role. And we looked at the existing 1987 document. We reaffirmed to use the 1987 document as a starting point for editing at the 2017 meeting. And then I took that and transcribed part of it. Parts of it were so old that was not worth transcribing. And I brought a track changes document to the board, which we discussed in June of 2018. In the June of 2018 meeting, the board voted to address the definition of a quorum. So the definition of a quorum we accepted at that time was that it is a majority of the members currently serving. But we did not vote on the track changes bylaws revision. We had some discussion items at that time and some additions to that. And I've also been working on a change to the Connecticut General Statutes to bring just a couple typos up to date, and also in reference to the board members' terms. So I held on finalizing the bylaws while the statute change was occurring. We did have to drop it in the first round. We brought it back to legislative session in spring of 2020, and then the COVID situation froze a lot of legislative activities. So that change is still out there, but I believe that it would be a good idea to move forward with our bylaws anyways, and I can leave a note in there about that. But I would like to take a look at these. I would like to accept something as a working document so that we are not beholden to the 1987 bylaws. And then unless somebody has major issues with what this says. And then I would suggest that if there are other changes you want to make over time, that we can be updating the bylaws whenever and as frequently as we want to. But I would like to get a better working document in place.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess last piece is what you have is the version we were looking at in 2018, except that I've removed the comments and track changes that have already been addressed. There's a couple notes left in here for you. And like I said, we can continue to improve it. But this is the version based on your comments in 2018.
Okay, this is Jared, and I just have the question of whether or not in the bylaws there needs to be any language that allows the SPO or you, Jenny, particularly, to determine whether we meet in a room at your office or whether we enjoy the luxury of doing it on computer.
I did add a statement.
Yeah, that's in article, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Where?
It's article, this is Cece, it's article 4 under meetings.
Oh, yes, there you are.
Okay, so it does talk about technical difficulties. Oh, well, that was in 2018. I think a lot of those have been taken care of. Well, except for I got kicked off this morning, but
don't take it personally.
I know it talks about in 2020 need remote conference procedures for all, so that I think we should leave it. We should make sure that it just accommodates increasing technological proficiencies and the efficacy of doing it along with evolving technology.
So in 2018, before complete remote meetings was an idea, there was a comment to add a procedure for remote participation of a board member who couldn't get to the meeting. I rather than addressing that, though, I changed language to say that we meet 3 times a year. We actually meet 4, but 3 is the federal requirement, either in person or via remote meeting. And I did not put in a specific number of times per year for meeting in person because, as we know in this environment, flexibility might be a good idea.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm very satisfied with that. Anybody else have observations they want to share?
Well, this is Cecilia. So Jenny, right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 6 pink bullet points, and are some of them look like they're not resolved. So are they going to stay there as undergoing revision still?
No, some of those are just notes for you to be aware of.
Okay.
The only ones that I will have to address are, there was a suggestion to change the number of members of the board to between 6 and 10.
Right.
I neglected to request that in the legislative change, so I'm going to see if I can add it in now or not. So I will follow up on that. For now, it has to stay 10 members because that's what, if you want this phrasing in the bylaws, it would have to stay 10 members because that's what's in state statute.
Okay.
the federal regulations do not require that. They only require 5. And then the same thing, there's a note in here regarding the legislative change I requested.
Right.
So, we can leave that as a note. I can put in what the requirement is now with a footnote or something to address that when the statutes are approved, if they go through.
Okay.
Okay.
Board members, do we have a general consensus that we should adopt this at this time?
Why not?
Do you need a motion?
Well, I was just asking if people felt inclined to do it at this time. Does anybody not feel inclined to do it? Well, then let me ask for a motion to approve this as discussed.
This
I
is
so
Mark,
move,
and I so
John.
move. Oh, well then,
Oh,
John,
all
I
right.
second. This is Mark.
Yes. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, let's have a vote. Roll call.
Okay. Phil,
You have to name the names.
Phil Barlow.
Oh, lost him.
Okay, we'll come back. Cecilia,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ken Feder,
Oof.
He's fallen asleep.
Lou and
We're having a lot of trouble on Teams that people are coming on and off with great
Yeah.
frequency. So we'll come back around. John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Cece,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
Okay, and I would just remind everyone, accepting this, these will be our working minutes. I will redistribute them and can post them. But if you do see more changes needed, there's nothing preventing us from updating them at any time. Phil, are you back on?
He seems
Try
to be
again.
muted.
You're still muted. So I see Phil is on, but muted.
Yeah.
Jared, do you want to come? I'm sorry.
Yes. I don't think that to have a unanimous vote if we're missing 2 votes. So I think we have approved the bylaws and we can adjust them as we see fit in the future.
Okay.
So those who responded to the roll call all were in favor of.
Yep.
We know who they are.
This is one. No.
Okay, let's look at the policy statement.
Okay. So the next agenda item is our 2 policy statements that I've drafted. Just as you know from just looking at the bylaws, we don't have any other policy that is current. So the first policy statement that you see a draft of is for the review of the move documentations associated with relocating buildings. So I'm proposing to have a policy statement because the federal guidelines, the federal regulations for the National Register address relocation of buildings and National Register status, but only by requiring a very brief list of information items the Park Service needs to make a decision. We reviewed one of these recently was the Pinto House, and for some of you who may recall, we did both portions of the process for the Hoyt Barnum House in Stamford, which was a much more difficult move. So we did the pre-move and post-move documentation for that. And for the Pinto House in New Haven, we recently did the pre-move documentation. But one issue that we've had is that the Park Service does not define the level of detail needed in the documentation or the format of the documentation. Usually I discuss that with whoever's proposing the move and requesting to retain the status. But it became apparent recently that it would be helpful to have more of a requirement for a minimum standard. So that is why you have this policy statement, which I would suggest being active as soon as we're happy with it and it's signed.
Okay, I think that the Pinto House it was a good exercise, and I think it pays off when we're looking at this, and it will help anybody who is considering doing a move. They'll know what is involved as far as we're concerned. So I think it's an excellent, excellent suggestion. I don't have any specific recommendations other than to say that I personally support it. Anybody else have observations they want to share?
This is Cece. I always think it's better to go in with a clear regulatory list of standards to meet versus flailing around.
Totally.
This is John. I completely agree with that. I also think it's helpful to the applicant to know what's expected of them so that they don't have to learn by mistake.
Oh, totally. I think the Pinto House was
Chris,
an excellent
the same. In the Pinto case, I had some discussions with the consultant and who was sort of like flailing around trying to figure out what was expected, and this will be very helpful.
Okay, so would you like us to approve these, Jenny, or at least this particular one?
I would, and again, you know, policy statements we can update anytime with a vote and re-sign.
Okay, do you need a vote with a roll call vote for these, or is this just a matter of everybody saying they accept them?
Let's do a vote, and then Jared will talk after about getting, I would like your signature as well.
Excellent.
So let's do a vote. Phil?
Jared, before we vote, this is Mark. I just had one really quick question clarification on this policy. The last two bullets on the first page regarding historic structure reports and temporary structures or equipment, that line may be, could we clarify? I think it's assumed that depending on the situation, that may be required. Who's the decider on that? Would that be SHPO? Would that be, who's going to make the call as to whether or not this may or may not require a historic structures report? Or
good question.
Well, I think the State Historic Preservation Officer would make that call, and the State Review Board would also have a role in defining whatever requirements should be met. In good case scenarios, when I'm approached for relocations, I suggest and prefer to have consult early, so we can take a look at the situation. And with Hoyt Barnum, that did occur, and they did need a historic structure report because we didn't understand what materials were actually old or to what history they were associated with. In some cases it may be obvious and not needed, but I would say the State Historic Preservation Officer and the State Review Board.
Thank you. That was my only question. I don't disagree with the bullet point itself. I just was looking for a little clarification.
So I could add a line in there.
Yeah.
Yes. please.
Why don't we just add that language?
Okay.
Okay. So we've approved this policy statement. Let's turn to the second one.
We haven't voted yet.
Oh, wow. We haven't heard the names roll call.
Okay. Phil? He's frozen.
Geez.
Okay.
I'm so sorry about the difficulties today. Cecilia?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay. Jared?
Yes.
Ken?
He's still absent.
Okay. John?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Cece?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
So the majority have voted yes.
Phil
And
did say
therefore-
yes before we changed the.
Oh, that was a yes. It was sort of a garbled. Yes. All right. Okay. So we've adopted the policy statement. Now let's turn to the second policy statement, right?
Okay. Okay, so similarly, for the last several years, we've been bringing cases to you for properties proposed for demolition under where the Attorney General is considering Protection Act. We've asked the State Review Board to evaluate the continued status of that property. And based on our September meeting and the representatives for the property owner in that meeting having concerns over noticing and procedure, we thought it would be helpful to us to establish that this is normal practice, to establish that part of the State Review Board's role is to make recommendations to the SHPO, and that our office may seek your guidance at any time. And then just how, sort of the format of how that would be brought to the State Review Board meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah. It sounds, we're just codifying what we've done. Is that correct?
Yes. I plan to if these are accepted, sign them and post them on our website so that we have some backup when we need to tell people that this is our procedure.
Okay.
So
Good
they
idea.
don't yell and scream.
Oh, they're going to do that anyway.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, Review Board members?
Just one typo. State should be capitalized, State Historic Preservation Council, I think, down near the bottom of the first page, Jenny. The State Historic Office may seek formal or informal advice. That the fourth line of that paragraph.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, are we ready for a vote? Let's run the roll call, Jenny.
Okay, Phil, we'll try again.
Aye.
Okay. Cecilia?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Jared?
Yes.
Ken Feder, he's still absent? Okay, he's
Wait
not
till he
there.
hears about it.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cece?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Well, there we go.
All right.
Thank you all. Well, that's excellent. And anytime you want more policy statements, just keep us informed. I think that's excellent move. Jenny has the 4 dates, or with alternates identified, for the upcoming meetings. Do you want to just ask people's approval?
Yes, so I've proposed our 4 meetings for next year based on the same times of year that we typically meet. For March and June, there's an alternate date because I know especially in June there are sometimes some conflicts. So I'll just ask, does anybody have a conflict with any of the dates that are proposed?
Not at this time.
Not
Can't go anywhere, can't do anything.
Right.
Well, maybe by next September.
Oh, I've heard promises before. No.
But let's be hopeful, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Let's follow John's hopeful attitude.
Okay, so then we'll go with March 26th and June 18th as the dates, and I will recirculate this and post it online.
Excellent. Is there any further business that you want to bring up at this time, Jenny?
I have a quick staff report, but no other discussion items.
All right, proceed.
I was just going to share that I just participated in a National Register workshop with the Park Service. Normally there's either a tax credit training or annual meeting of National Register coordinators nationwide, or they do others. And since we can't do that this year, Roger Reed, who is the Connecticut reviewer, and Barbara Wyatt, who has several states and is a landscape historian, had a training for the SHPOs that they review, which is about 15 states. So that was really interesting and is something that we're going to continue doing. And at some point, I will share some of the insight that was discussed, particular in relationship to tax credit projects in progressive era schools. Yeah, it's a big topic. There's a lot, there's a lot of discussion happening now around integrity for certain types of resources also. So at some point I will bring some of that and share it with you. And my other update is that there was a rule change proposed under the Trump administration to the National Register regulations. That rule change is specific to the authority that federal have in terms of the process and listing of federal properties. And it also affects the owner objection regulation. So right now, when we notice a nomination, if a majority of owners object to the listing, a property cannot be listed or district. There is a proposal to add that if the owners of the majority of acreage object to a listing, it also can't be listed. So that is something that came out in the spring of 2019 that we responded to and solicited other public comment for. It had moved through the process to the president's, the current president's Office of Management and Budget, and the Information and Regulatory Office, which is named, it's the Information and Regulatory Affairs Unit within the Office of Management and Budget. It has moved there for the final stage of the process, and I organized a meeting with that office, and Chris Wigren also helped representing both the State Review Board and Preservation Connecticut. So that was an opportunity for states to have one final word I know that Paul Lothar was among the last group to have a say on November 23rd. Paul Lothar being the former keeper of the National Register who left his post under this administration. So I have not followed up yet to see if they will be successful in pushing this through this month. I'm going to do that very soon. If it goes through, there are some mechanisms for reversing it. So I'm just letting you know that we are following this. We are responding. We mobilized some other entities to comment. We included Connecticut Preservation Action, as well as invitations to our federally recognized tribes who are communicating also on their own, I believe, but they did join our meeting as well. So something to look out for, and hopefully it won't get through. So hopefully we won't be in a situation to have to reverse it under Biden. So with that happy note, that's the end of my report, unless Jonathan or Liz has anything to add.
I think this has been a great meeting, and I thank everybody for their active participation. And we should declare the meeting adjourned.
The motion that never fails.
Right. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for putting up with the technology.
Oh.
No problem.
Technology or traffic? I guess you have to pick one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny, very much. You do a great job.
Thank you.
Yes, I second
Bye,
that.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.